The cold, salty wind whipped across the Naval Special Warfare training compound, carrying with it the barks and howls of the K9 units in the distance. It was a sound that would make any rational person's blood run cold, but for the instructors standing by the chain-link pen, it was the sound of their latest motivation exercise. Chief Matthew "Mac" McAllister, a 20-year veteran with a chest full of medals and a heart full of grit, watched the new transport truck kick up dust on the horizon. Beside him, Senior Chief Roberts spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the ground. "Fresh meat," Roberts grumbled, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "This batch looks soft, especially that one." He pointed a thick finger at the smallest figure climbing down from the truck. The new recruit moved with an unusual grace, her posture straight, her eyes scanning the perimeter not with fear, but with a calm, assessing gaze that Mac found slightly off-putting. The woman, who went by the name Kai Jensen on her paperwork, stood in formation with the other Hell Week washouts and new transfers. She was shorter than the others, with sun-bleached hair pulled tight under her cap and skin tanned to a leathery brown. While the other men shifted nervously, listening to the horror stories being whispered about the compound, Kai stood stock still, her attention locked on the dog pen 100 yards away. She could see the shapes moving inside, German shepherds. Belgian Malinois, their muscles coiled like springs. The compound had a tradition. It wasn't official, never written down in any manual, but it was as sacred as the creed itself. When new boots arrived who thought they were something special, they were given a taste of reality. And the ultimate taste was a few minutes in the pit with the working dogs. Dogs that were fed just enough to keep them hungry, trained to attack on command, and conditioned to see strangers as threats. And Mac didn't like the tradition. He never had. But he was outranked by Roberts when it came to these character-building exercises. Roberts believed in breaking a man down to nothing and rebuilding him. Mac believed in finding the steel that was already there and sharpening it. "Listen up, princesses!" Roberts bellowed, striding in front of the line of 10 recruits. "You think you're tough? You think because you survived basic, because you ran a few miles, because you can do 100 push-ups, that you're ready to be a SEAL? You're wrong." He stopped directly in front of Kai. "You're all maggots, wiggling, useless maggots, and today we're going to feed you to the birds." A ripple of confusion went through the line. Feed them to the birds? Mac stepped forward, his voice calmer, but no less intimidating. "In 5 minutes, you are going to be inserted into the K9 training pen. Inside that pen are 4 Belgian Malinois. They are military working dogs, trained to neutralize hostiles. And they have not been fed since yesterday morning." Panic visibly washed over the faces of the men. One of them, a muscular kid named Branson from Texas, started to shake his head. This is insane! You can't do this! That's attempted murder!" Roberts got right in Branson's face. "Attempted murder? Son, this is character building. The dogs won't kill you. They'll just rough you up a little. Teach you to keep fighting even when a 200-pound missile with fangs is trying to rip your throat out. Unless, of course, you want to quit. The bus back to civilian land is right over there." Kai didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She simply watched the dogs. She noticed the way they moved. They weren't just mindless killers. They were strategic. They flanked. They cornered. They responded to the handler's whistle. She looked at the handler standing by the gate, and a young specialist holding a clicker and a pouch of treats. She noted the specific pitch of the whistle he used to call them back. The 5 minutes passed like seconds. The 10 recruits were herded toward the pen. The gate was a heavy steel mesh 8 feet high. Inside, the 4 Malinois, Ares, Thor, Loki, and a particularly vicious female named Nyx, began to pace. Their lips curled back, revealing rows of gleaming teeth. A deep, guttural growl rose from the pit of their chests, a sound of pure, territorial rage. Last chance to turn back and scrub latrines for the rest of your contract, Roberts shouted, laughing. No one moved. Open the gate! The handler pulled the lever. The metal latch clanged. The gate swung inward. The 4 dogs exploded into motion, a blur of tan and black fur, saliva flying from their jaws. It was chaos. Branson tried to stand his ground, fists up, but Thor leaped, latching onto his padded arm. The force of the impact sent him sprawling into the dirt. Another recruit, a quiet kid named Ortiz, tried to climb the fence, but Loki jumped, grabbing the cuff of his pants and yanking him back down. Screams, growls, and the thud of bodies hitting the ground filled the air, and then there was Kai. She hadn't run. She hadn't balled up. When Ares, the largest of the pack, barreled toward her, teeth aimed for her thigh, she did something that made Mac's heart stop. She dropped to one knee. She didn't cower. She lowered herself to their level. I turned her body slightly sideways, a non-threatening posture, and extended her open hand, palm up, just as Ares launched himself into the air. The dog's powerful jaws should have closed around her forearm. The bone should have snapped. But instead of attacking, Ares froze mid-lunge, his front paws hitting the ground just inches from her. His ears, which had been flat against his head, twitched forward. The growl in his throat hitched, changing pitch. He sniffed her hand, and his black nose twitching furiously. Kai looked the dog directly in the eyes. She didn't blink. She held his gaze with a calm authority that seemed to radiate from her very core. Her lips moved, but she made no sound that the men outside the pen could hear. It wasn't a word. It was a barely audible hum, a specific frequency. Ares whined. The sound was so incongruous with the violence happening around them that Roberts choked on his tobacco. The massive attack dog, a beast that had bitten more soldiers than the enemy, sat down. He sat down and looked up at Kai, his tail giving a single hesitant wag. Nyx, the aggressive female, had been circling, looking for an opening. She saw Ares sit. She saw the posture of the woman. She approached slowly, her own growl fading into a series of curious sniffs. Kai repeated the gesture, the same open palm, the same steady gaze. Nyx licked her fingers. "What the hell?" Roberts screamed at the handler. "Hey, get your dogs under control! Attack! Attack command!" The handler frantically blew the whistle and shouted the Dutch commands for attack. "Pack! Pack!" But the dogs didn't respond. Ares and Nyx were now flanking Kai, sitting on either side of her like royal guards. Thor and Loki, who had been wrestling with Branson and Ortiz, stopped. They looked at their pack leaders. They saw Ares and Nyx calm. They saw the strange human, and they sensed something they had never sensed before. A leader. Kai slowly rose to her feet. The 4 dogs sat in a semicircle around her, their chests heaving, their tongues lolling out. They were waiting for her next command. Mac pushed off the fence, his mind racing. He had seen a lot in his 20 years. He had seen Navy SEALs stare down enemy insurgents. He had seen men perform acts of impossible bravery, but he had never ever seen a pack of ravenous, attack-trained Belgian Malinois called off by a single, unarmed recruit kneeling in the dirt. Kai walked toward the gate. The dogs followed, a perfect procession. She looked at the handler, then at Mac. Her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly in the sudden silence. "Alpha roll," she said simply. They responded to an alpha roll submission signal, but they needed to see that I wasn't afraid first. Eye contact and vibration. She stepped through the gate. The dogs stopped at the threshold, respecting the boundary, their eyes still fixed on her. Roberts was purple with rage. You sabotaged this! You know the handler! You drugged the dogs!" Mac stepped between Roberts and Kai. "Shut up, Roberts!" He looked at Kai, his eyes narrowing. "Who are you? And don't give me that Jensen name from Iowa. I've been to Iowa. They don't teach that there." Kai met his gaze. There was a deep sadness in her eyes, but also a rock-solid foundation of truth. My name is Kai. Kai is my professional name. My legal name is classified. But since you're asking, before today, I was a contractor. I worked for a private firm that specializes in canine behavior modification for the Department of Defense. Before that, I spent 6 years as a civilian handler for the 341st Training Squadron at Lackland Air Force Base. I'm the person they call when a $50,000 special operations dog goes rogue and starts attacking its own handler. I fix the unfixable. The silence was deafening. Max stared at her. You're a dog trainer. The Navy spent millions recruiting you, and you're a dog trainer? Kai shook her head. No, Chief. I'm a dog whisperer. There's a difference. Trainers teach commands. I understand trauma. Those dogs in there? She pointed back at the pen where Aries was still staring at her longingly. They weren't attacking because they were mean. They were attacking because they were scared. The loud noises, the new smells of fear from the recruits, the handler shouting in Dutch, it overwhelmed them. I just reminded them that they don't have to be afraid, that I'm in charge now. Roberts scoffed. This is bull. This is a circus act. Get her out of my sight. But Mac held up a hand. He looked at the dogs, then at the other recruits who were being helped to their feet, bleeding but alive. They were alive because one woman had kept her head when everyone else panicked. He looked back at Kai. You're not going to BUD/S, are you? You're not here to be a SEAL. Kai allowed herself the smallest hint of a smile. No, Chief. I'm here because the K9 unit in this command has a problem. 3 of their top dogs are washing out, biting handlers, refusing to work. They're going to be put down unless someone can figure out why. The higher-ups thought it would be better if I saw the problem from the inside, experienced the training, the stress, the environment firsthand. They thought if I could feel what the dogs feel, I could fix them. Mac let out a long, low whistle. So the new recruit hazing ritual, we just threw our multi-million-dollar solution into a pit of her own patience. It appears so, Kai said. From behind them, a soft whine made them turn. Aries had pushed his nose through the gap in the gate. He was looking at Kai, his eyes soft, his tail wagging gently. Kai looked at Mac. Permission to go to work, Chief? He's asking for me. Mac stepped aside. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mike granted. And Jensen? Next time you're about to reveal you're a covert operative masquerading as a recruit, maybe do it before we throw you into a death trap. Kai walked back toward the gate, her hand reaching out to scratch Aries behind the ears. And miss the look on Senior Chief Roberts' face? Not a chance. As she stepped back into the pen, the 4 dogs surrounded her, not as attackers, but as eager students greeting a beloved teacher. The violence of the morning was forgotten. In its place was a profound silence, broken only by the happy panting of 4 vicious killers who had just found their new best friend. Mac watched her walk among them, and he realized that the Navy hadn't sent them a recruit. They had sent them a miracle worker, and she had arrived not with guns and grenades, but with an open hand and a calm heart.